Hello and welcome to episode 35 and 36, Race Against Time, Intelligence Dilemma and Israel-Palestine Conflict. Today, to have a fresh look at this event, as well as some of the past aspects of this conflict too, we have with us intelligence and security expert, Dr. Avner Barnea. Hi, Avner. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, Omkar. How are you? I'm very happy to be with you.
I'm doing
I'm
great.
looking forward.
Yes. Yeah, I really hope things are fine at your place as well. And we really hope to receive more insights from your end because I've been
Mhm.
following your articles as well, especially some of the latest event. So yeah, without any delay, let's get into the topic. I would say, before starting with the actual topic that we have for today's episode, can you briefly, firstly, give us an overview of your academic side and how you
Okay.
ended up being the in a position that you are at the moment in the intelligence and security domain?
Okay. So I was a member of the Israeli Security Agency, ISA, which is responsible for the internal intelligence in Israel, including the Judea and Samaria, where we have around 3 million Palestinians, and also in Gaza Strip with around 2 million. So the ISA is the intelligence agency which is responsible mainly for counterterrorism, counter-espionage, and counter-extreme subversion. And after I retired as a brigadier general, I finished my PhD, which is actually focused on intelligence failures, and that's what this is my main issue of research. I'm member of the Center of National Security Studies in the University of Haifa in Israel. And I'm writing quite a lot about national security focused on counterintelligence in various journals all over. And it's quite intensive research about this, trying to see what are the challenges, what has to be done in order to improve the performance of the ISA. I'm looking at it from outside. It's a very different view when you're inside the organization and outside.
Yes,
Many I would say perspectives I lack many perspectives when I was inside. And only when
yes,
I retired and went out and looking at the counterintelligence from another perspective, I see, aspects that I didn't see before. And in the time of overflow or overload of information, there is a lot of information that can be a basis for research. And so it's an ongoing thing. And nowadays I am very, very busy with the latest, maybe we'll talk about it later, with the latest terrible intelligence failure that we had on the 7th of October when Israel was attacked, faced sudden attack by the Hamas from Gaza, exactly 50 years and 1 day after we had something, a similar failure with the Yom Kippur War, when we were surprised by the Egyptian and the Syrian
yes,
forces. So we are in a different situation right now, but unfortunately, this failure happened again,
yes.
and there is a lot of lessons that have to be drawn out of it.
Yes, I believe you mentioned intelligence failure. So, because we
Yeah.
have a broad range of audience on the podcast, I cover space, defense, and security. So the people who are even the working on the military satellite issues as well, they are also the one of the prime audience of the podcast. So especially for them actually. So can you please give us a brief context on the uh, of Israel-Palestine conflict in general, and then we'll kick off
Okay.
with the prime questions. Yeah.
Okay, so I will say that the conflict that we have with the Palestinians is going back many, many, many years ago. There are people who say maybe even 100 years ago, but actually it became more intensive since 1967, when we had what is called the Six-Day War, when Israel actually was attacked by Jordan and Egypt and Syria, and we took lands from these three countries: the Ramat Golan from Syria, the Judea and Samaria from Jordan, and the Gaza Strip and the peninsula of Sinai from Egypt. But since then, we had a peace treaty with Egypt and Jordan since 1993. And with
Okay.
Syria, we don't have yet any closure to the conflict, but they are not active against us. Recently more, but it's not a kind of it's a tense situation, but it's not worrying us so much. Although in the last months they suddenly became more active. And the main challenge of us is the Palestinians in Judah and Samaria and in Gaza. What actually happened is that in Judah and Samaria, we have a military rule in this area with around 3 million Palestinians, while in Gaza Strip, where there are 2 million Palestinians, actually in 2006, Israel withdrew from Gaza. We had the intensive military forces and even some Jewish settlements. It's all we left everything behind, and Israel is now on the border between us and Gaza Strip. And what happened is that we have quite a good relations with the Palestinian Authority since the early 90s, while in Gaza, since 2007, it's controlled by the Hamas, who is a religious organization, very, very, very anti-Israeli, anti-Jewish people, and not ready to any compromise, and they have in the agenda even to destroy Israel. So the conflict with the Hamas in Gaza is very, very significant. While in the Judah and Samaria, sometimes we have a lot of activity of counterterrorism, but we keep the situation under control there.
Okay.
So this is the structure of the conflict right now. We have peace treaty with Egypt, peace treaty with Jordan, and it makes our lives much easier, but still there are a lot of challenges that we are facing all the time.
Yeah, and just to take a deep dive into the similar on the similar lines, I would say, I mean, I have seen from my personal experience as well, like the collecting information and then feeding the information through the intelligence channels. It's also challenging, but what are the key challenges, especially in monitoring and preventing terror attacks in the context of Israel-Palestine conflict, I would say, because I believe in general as well, collecting information, of course, it has its own risk, but implementing it, monitoring it, and kind of preventing such a havoc of attacks, what does it take? What are the prime challenges involved in this process?
Okay. Since the establishment of Israel in 1948, the intelligence became very, very critical component in the national security conception of Israel. And the reason is that the IDF, the Israel Defense Forces, are quite small, but we have a very huge forces which are in reserve, meaning that we are calling them, they are trained around a month, a year, and we are calling them in time of crisis. But the whole concept is based on early warning, meaning that if a country intends to attack Israel, the intelligence have to give a warning of at least 48 hours, so we will have enough time to recruit the reserves, because the reserves are the main forces in the Israeli defense forces, and not those who are serving as regular in regular service. So the outcome of what I'm saying now is that since the establishment of Israel, intelligence was a major component in the national security. And this went on from 1948 up to now. Obviously, before the peace treaty with Egypt and Jordan, we were more concerned about a possible attack by these two countries. But since the peace treaty with them, it's not a problem anymore. But still, we have a major problem with the Hezbollah in Lebanon, which actually are active against Israel since the mid-80s. And in the last 20 years, they are very much under the control of Iran. And actually, they are like a proxy of Iran. They are doing what Iran is ordering them to do. And there are also some of these units also in our mutual border with Syria. So Hezbollah became also, in addition to Hamas, Hezbollah in South Lebanon, in the north of Israel, became a major challenge. And we had a few conflict clashes with the Hezbollah as well as with the Hamas. And from the Israeli national security conception, we prefer not to be engaged in two fronts at the same time. So now, when we are engaged in a war with Hamas, and we have some small clashes with the Hezbollah in the northern part of Israel, we are considering not to that this situation will not become another war or another front. So so intelligence is very, very critical for us for so many years. And we are and the basis of this conception is that the intelligence has to be so strong that it will be able to give us an early warning of, as I said before, 48 hours before anyone of our neighbors will attack us. Otherwise, it will be difficult for us to retaliate, because it takes around 48 hours to recruit the reserve forces. Now, for example, when we are engaged in a war with Hamas, the number of reservists in that front is around 250,000, which are all civilians that have been recruited for this purpose, and at the end of the war, they will be released and go back to their families and to their business activity and so on. So intelligence is so much for us, and a lot of the Israeli national security budget is allocated to intelligence, to gathering of intelligence. Yes, and I'll speak in a few minutes about the problems of analysis. Obviously the gathering of information is not enough. You have to need a very strong analytical capabilities in order to understand what is to be able to evaluate the standard or the strengths of the threat. So,
Yes.
but I will speak about it in a minute about what happened to
Yeah.
us recently with the Hamas.
Yes. And it is really good that you tried to mention about the hierarchy as well. So, just out of curiosity, you mentioned about Israel Securities Authority, from which, you had also actually been associated with them.
Mm-hmm.
So does Mossad and Shin Bet are under this umbrella, or they are like completely different agencies?
No, the Shin Bet is what I mentioned before, is the ISA, Israel Security Agency.
Okay.
They are as well as the ISA is responsible for internal intelligence, while the
Okay.
Mossad is responsible for external
External. Yeah.
intelligence. Okay, but both of them are working very closely with the IMI, the Israeli military agency of the Israeli military intelligence, and which is in Israel. The IMI is responsible for the national estimate, okay? Meaning
Okay.
that in order to the IMI, the Israel military intelligence, is delivering and sharing its estimates with the government, around about the challenges, and in that process, the ISA in the Mossad are taking place. Although the IMI is under the Minister of Defense, while the Mossad and the ISA are directly under the Prime Minister. But still,
All right.
the cooperation between these three components of the Israel intelligence community is very, very close and strong.
Okay. And it is really great that you mentioned about this complete foundation of the intelligence agencies, because I believe this has been built on the past failures, as you mentioned. There have been some failures in the past, and based on that, you started developing the intelligence agencies. And,
Yeah.
like fast forwarding it back to October 2023, when this event happened recently. So, do you think Hamas already planted its people and infiltrated Israel's territory for the past year to carry out a multi-domain attack? Because I believe this was not just an attack through the missile, it was through land, air, and sea. I mean, all the domains were utilized. I'm not sure about the space domain, whether it was utilized or not, but at least I believe land, air, and sea multi-domain attack was carried out by them. So do you think they already had infiltrated the territory?
In order to attack the settlements which are around the border with Gaza, there are around 22 settlements there, which all of them has been attacked in one time.
Okay.
Around 3,000 Hamas people, soldiers actually, okay, have taken part in this. Most of them at the end have been killed by the IDF, and a few hundreds of them went back to Gaza, and they took around 240 hostages, most of them civilians, but some of them are military soldiers, and a few have been stayed in Israel in order for further attacks. But we believe that most of them have been killed since in various clashes inside Israel, and we tend to believe that there are no more Hamas, let's say, operatives in Israel itself. But the attack, when they attack Israel, on that day of the 7th of October, around 3,000 people were able actually past the fence. There was a huge fence which they overcome, and they entered to Israel. And the purpose was to kill as many Israelis as they can, either old people, young people, soldiers, and so on, and also to take hostages back to Gaza in order to negotiate afterwards with Israel to see what Israel will be ready to give them in exchange for these 240 hostages. This is the situation that we are facing right now. And of course, still there is a lot to investigate how it happened to us, but now we know, and it's not final, the Hamas was training for this attack for around a year. And we had very few signals about it. We didn't have early warning on before the 7th of October. It was a total surprise for Israel. And from the intelligence that we have gathered from those who have been killed and their bodies have been left in Israel, we saw that they have actually very good intelligence about the settlements that when they came into in order to attack there. And most of this information seems to be gathered from the open space. For example, we saw a lot of photos of the settlements which have been taken from satellites. They are very good, very good resolution. And it's so we don't know yet how much they actually have been penetrated into Israel. You know that the border between Gaza and Israel is locked, is closed. Very few employees from Gaza were allowed to work in Israel. Usually they're working in a very simple works, like in the fields, agriculture, and so on. They didn't have any, as far as we know, they didn't have any access with, with sensitive installations and so on. They were very simple workers and mostly in agriculture.
Yes. And I mean, just to kind of, I would say a step forward and take a deep dive into the internal affairs as well of Israel. So we have seen, the protests have been happening in Israel since past year as well. So do you believe that Israel's current government is inclined towards extreme right, and because of this, what implications it had on the current conflict, basically?
It's a very, very good question, Omkar. Thank you so much. We have since December last year, we have a very extreme right government here. And immediately when they took power, they decided they want to change the legal system in Israel. But actually, when you look at it, in more details, it's actually to change not just the legal system, but to make Israel another country, not a liberal democracy as we are. Okay? And they started, and the focus of their activity was not on security, on economics, and so on. The focus was how they will be able to pass new laws that will give them much more power, and actually they enable them to stay in power for many, many years because they wanted to change the court system, the legal system, the political system, so on. And there was a huge, as a result of that steps that have been taken by this government, there was a huge protest and demonstration all over the country. And because people felt that the essence of Israel is changing. Israel was established in 1948 as a democracy, liberal democracy with rights for everyone, every citizen of Israel, and we were facing intentions to change it dramatically. Now, how it affected the national security, as I said before, many of the reservists in Israel, they are served by law up to the age of 35 or something like this, and afterwards you can volunteer if you want, up to the age of 50, 55 even. And many of the reservists who are in the process, who are in the level of volunteering, said that they will not serve a country which is not a democracy anymore. And they say that if something will happen, okay, if there is a crisis, they will immediately participate in the national effort, but otherwise they are objecting this new direction of the government. And actually, when the Israeli military force was recruited, many of these people who object the government immediately start to serve in the IDF. But during this year, the Israeli intelligence had a few indications that our enemies, mainly the Hamas and the Hezbollah, which is both are supported by Iran, feel that Israel maybe is becoming weaker than it was before. And maybe this is an opportunity for them to take advantage of this situation. And the head of the IDF and the heads of the Israeli intelligence community actually warned the prime minister and his leading ministers, cabinet ministers, that the situation is that Israel is under threat because our enemies feel suddenly that they can, that maybe Israel is not so strong as it was before. But the government and the prime minister wouldn't listen to them. They thought that this is maybe a kind of disinformation, I mean, kind of political consideration behind it, and the government didn't do anything about it. And so we found ourselves on the 7th of October in a situation when the Hamas and Iran, and maybe, we don't know yet, the Hezbollah, are feeling that they can take an advantage of the situation of Israel, but from what we can see up to now, they were totally wrong, because after this attack on the 7th of October, the whole country has been mobilized in order to participate in a war, in order to win, and different than it was before, to remove the Hamas from their positions in Gaza. And that's why this war is going to be quite long and very fierce, because you have to find the leaders and the major commanders and so on in order to eliminate them.
Okay. You mentioned about Iran, and I'm coming to that question now, because you really mentioned completely about what really went wrong in preventing this attack. It was, of course, that the government didn't took care of the prior intelligence that was coming in. And do you think Iran is responsible for supporting and meddling in Israel's security affairs, which might have given Hamas an opportunity to carry out such a massive attack?
We don't know yet if Iran was actually involved in the decision to attack Israel on that day. But we know for sure that for many, up to it's now many years actually, that the Iran is supporting Hamas and Hezbollah with equipment, military equipment, and there are, and also financing, okay? And they are standing beyond them as they consider Hezbollah and Hamas as a proxy for Iran in order to attack Israel, while the Iranians say publicly, they mention it so many times that they want to destroy Israel. We don't know. Actually, I have to tell you, we don't know exactly what is the reason for that, because Iran is far from Israel. What they have against us, we don't know. but they are
Yes.
saying it again and again. Their mission is to destroy Israel. And for this, they are using Hezbollah, Hamas, and they also have some militia forces in Syria and mainly in Syria, and our border with Syria. So,
Yes.
so Iran didn't give the order to Hamas that morning, now attack, but they are strongly support them, and we have also intelligence. The operatives from Hamas have been trained in Iran, or even Iranian instructors have come clandestinely to Gaza to train there, and they give them a lot of instructions how to. They actually taught them how to act as military force and not as a group of terrorists. And this is the major change that Hamas have done in the last 1-2 years. Suddenly they became commando forces and not just, traitors, terrorists who are, everyone is acting by his own. There is no, any coordination, any control, and so on. It's not like this. They are now like a military forces in every country.
Thank you for listening to episode 35. The further part of the conversation will be continued in episode 36. So I kindly request you to hop on to episode 36 and enjoy the further part of the conversation, because we are going to discuss some more elements of this conflict and some deep dive into the topics of the Israel's internal affairs. Thank you very much.